Hey everyone, so this is my 3 videos about 3 episodes of Elementary. It's going to be episode 5, Into the Woods, episode 6, Command Delete, and then episode 7, From Russia with Drugs. Um, so I'll try to quickly go through the murder of the week, or murder of the episode, very quickly. So in episode 5, there's this woman who is running a race slash obstacle course, and when her 2 friends at the finish line see her finally coming towards the finish line, they realize there's something wrong, and then Isabel ends up collapsing, and they see a knife on her back. So Marcus initially finds out from one of her friends that Isabel was part of an admissions at a private school. I don't remember if they said it was like a university or just like a high school or something like that. But when she would send out rejection letters, she got angry voicemails and all that from the parents of the kids who were rejected. He also finds out that the obstacle course slash race has no set route, so he can't really backtrack to figure out where she was stabbed at. But Sherlock comes up and's like, she was attacked in the southwest corner of this obstacle course by a pond. By the pond, Sherlock and Marcus find an abandoned cabin where they find evidence of someone was making illegal alcohol, and it looks like she witnessed witnessed the shooting, and so she was then stabbed. And they're thinking that the person who was shot was put in the lake. And lo and behold, there's 2 bodies in the lake. One is the dead man of by the name of Reginald Henderson, who was a bartender, and his pet hog named Truffles. And they're all thinking that the hog was a part of a larger plot, since Truffles was killed first, then Henderson, then Isabel. Joan was thinking that either Henderson was working with the killer or was forced to work with him, to extract ricin from castor beans, feed it to his pet, then killed himself. Isabel saw it and then was stabbed. Marcus then goes to the bar Henderson worked at, find out from a coworker or an old coworker that Henderson and his boss had a fight. The boss, Bo, I think they said his name was, and another bartender were in on the bartender that Marcus was talking to were in on the distillery, or the making of the illegal moonshine. Joan meets up with Sherlock and she finds out that he found an old wine bottle in the abandoned cabin and found a print. The print belongs to a Todd Harris, who was a wine dealer. So Marcus goes to Harris's house, finds signs of a break-in. They go inside and find him tied up, bleeding from a gunshot wound. In the hospital, Sherlock, Joan, and Marcus question Harris, albeit through a keyboard that translates text typed from the keyboard into a voice, because Harris has his mouth wired shut because the bullet where he was shot was in his on his right side of his face, um, and so they had to wire his mouth shut because his mandible was shattered or something like that. Um, so Harris tells them that, he woke up to the sound of a man in his house. Um, when he went to go investigate, he got knocked out, tied up, and woke up in his basement a few minutes later. The man was looking for a specific wine called the Baptiste, and the man took all Harris had before shooting him in the face. Outside the hospital room, Marcus realizes Harris was the first victim, and the other two were victims the next morning. He wants to put out an alert to stop anyone from serving the wine, but since it's very likely to be laced with poison. But Joan Bellucci knows who the person that is being targeted. She says to Sherlock that the person being targeted is Jason Wood. Don't remember what he said he does for a living. Just that he has a lot of enemies because of what he does. So Joan, Sherlock, and Marcus go talk with Wood and his wife, and they find out that Wood hadn't bought any bottles of his favorite wine, Baptiste, in a while, and were planning on buying some at an auction very soon. But he's like, I don't know if I should do that now. Sherlock's like, go ahead and do it anyway. So at the auction, one of the ones there, the cameras go black, while Marcus and the security guy, security manager or something, are looking at anybody who could be the person who poisoned him, or would poison him. And as that happens, Sherlock realizes that the two wine bottles that he put a mark on, were switched with laced bottles. So he asks Marcus to lock down the room. And once they do that, Marcus finds the camera jammer, in a potted plant. But he's like, I can't keep these people here based off of this, because, half of these people have, like, prosecutors, on speed dial or something like that. So Sherlock begrudgingly, let them go. So as they're letting them go, Sherlock realizes that the bartender that Marcus was talking to at the beginning of the episode is the killer, and the person who was gonna kill Jason Wood. The bartender went to high school with Jason Wood's wife, and was obsessed with her ever since. And he even got in trouble with the law about assault, I believe they said, and he had gone to prison. So that was episode 5, the mystery of the episode. In episode 6, Command Elite, Marcus meets with the wife of a former officer named Davis, who is missing. He finds that Davis was making a gun to kill all the people. Hmm. Essentially, they figure out that Davis was in the business of making porn on the side, um, or investing in a porn site. Um, and the reason why he signed up to invest in a porn site was because the woman that he was working with stiffed him out of $50,000. And so the up and coming site that she was making would have given him tons more money than that. So that suspect goes nowhere. Um, so eventually they find Davis, question him, and find out that Davis got a call from this guy's Royce saying that they wanted him to shoot out a window at the Warford Hotel and scare who was ever in the room. Charlotte calls the hotel, finds out it was rented by a private security firm who had a client who had a threat made upon their life. So that's why the person was theirs to make sure that um, he didn't get hurt or worse killed. Um, so they try to call or find out where the the security people took the client, but it's too late, and they find the two guards and the client, a middleweight boxer named Baron, killed. Um, Baron was taking a medicine for a condition that made it hard for him to digest food, but eventually they find out that he also has this rare medical condition that burns fat into muscle, I believe they said. I don't remember what the condition specifically is called. Either of the conditions are called, but they eventually find that out. And they're all thinking like, another of his doctors would had figured out that he had his condition and was trying to, synthesize a serum or pill or injection or whatever that would help other people burn fat into muscle or whatever. But they realize that Baron is possibly part of this family called with the last name Batista, and there's this woman that Sherlock knows who finds and buys the finest coffee beans by the name Casina. Um, or was it Carissa? It was Carissa. So Carissa figures out that the family that they think Baron is part of has this coffee grove that makes the rarest coffee, or this coffee that grows only in so many places. And the grove that they think his family owned, it was destroyed by an earthquake in 2016, and Baron was stopped or was killed to stop him from collecting on it. So Joan figures out that I think she was a nurse from one of Baron's doctor's office. She figured out who Baron was and decided to get pregnant by him to collect on the family fortune. And so she got pregnant by him, then eventually killed him. So that was the mystery of that episode. And then the final episode that I'm doing today is the final mystery is From Russia with Drugs. So there's this man named Ridley Deneen who, after coming home, or as he's coming home, is calling a woman, or calling his girlfriend Janice, who he wants to celebrate with because he just scored a duffel bag full of cash. Sometime later, Janice comes back home and finds Ridley dead on a pile of cash that's on the bed. They realize Ridley would steal from other criminals, and the reason why he would steal from other criminals, mainly drug dealers, is because he lost a brother who would do drugs, and so he would steal from the drug dealers because they had it coming, basically. Let's see. So they realized that Ridley was killed by fentanyl. And that Ridley had an he was allergic to cats. So Sherlock and Marcus go to Ridley's apartment and realize that Ridley's inhaler had fentanyl in it. And that went against what they were originally thinking, because Marcus was thinking, or at least what went against what Marcus was thinking, because Marcus originally thought that Ridley was killed by exposure to fentanyl from the money that was on the bed, but it turns out he was given fentanyl through his inhaler. So let's see. So Marcus and Joan have a theory, and they tell Gregson this. They tell him that the fentanyl was a derivative, or they think the fentanyl was a derivative that was used by Russians when some Chechen rebels took Russians hostage in Moscow. And so the Russians sprayed a mysterious gas in the building where the Chechens were holding the Russians hostage. And they think it was this fentanyl derivative that was sprayed in the building, and so therefore it's the same derivative that was given to Ridley. So Sherlock then goes to talk to Olga, a Russian spy, who previously saw her as a stripper. And so he asks her to find out if Ridley was a Russian spy. So Marcus then calls Gregson a little while later, thinking they found a guy that they think Ridley shot dead. His name is Cecil Troy, and they think the Russians hired Ridley to shoot Cecil and tipped him off about the stash house as payment, then killed Ridley to tie up loose ends. So Marcus, John, and Sherlock go to Cecil's job and talk with his colleague, Audrey. think that's her name. And she says that they found a way to remove things from items like rugs or tapestries, and they do work with international clients. So it could possibly be that someone they worked with had decided they wanted to hurt them or something, possibly. Sherlock then finds a burner phone in one of Cecil's drawers with 3 text messages. The first one was an address, or the first one was to tell whoever it was to go now, and then a second text was an address, and the third text was a series of numbers. So you go to the address, find a safe that's open, and think that Ridley was there sent by Cecil with the combination code. Turns out that Cecil owned the building that Ridley had gone to. It was left to him by his uncle after his uncle died. And it also turns out that Cecil and Ridley grew up on the same block. Sherlock meets up with Olga again, who tells him Cecil had no ties to Russian intelligence. She tells him that in the 3rd floor of the building that behind. Okay, so they're meeting in a coffee shop, and the building behind them, it houses a former Russian scientist who cooked up the fentanyl derivative that the Russians used to get the Chechens out of the building that they were holding the people hostage in. And it seems like the Russian scientist made some more of that fentanyl, and so Olga signals whoever plants this bomb in the apartment that the scientist is living in to blow it up by, moving the where that she had tied the scarf from one side of her neck to the other. Sherlock initially thinks that the reason the scientists got involved was because the Russians found out that Ridley stole from Russian businesses and hired him to kill Ridley. So they go, him and Joan go to the DEA to see if they can help them figure out what's going on and why. And as they're waiting, Joan reads a memo that talks about a safety protocol for handling contraband and drug raids, which included cash. And she thinks it explains who killed Ridley and why. So her, Marcus, and Sherlock go to Cecil's office again to speak with his co-worker Audrey, and they explain that they believe that Cecil and Audrey Cecil and Audrey had won a bid to clean money that had fentanyl on it because the government was worried people would absorb it through their skin and end up in the hospital or worse, killed because of it. But scientists were starting to come out saying that that's not true, that you can't trace them, because they're saying, the scientists were saying that there was not enough amount of fentanyl on money to be absorbed through the skin and kill you. So they needed a way to make it look like fentanyl could be absorbed through the skin. But so Cecil and Audrey cooked up a plan for Ridley to steal money or take money from what I guess he thought was a drug house. And so so while Ridley was doing that, Cecil and Audrey went to his apartment, put a whole bunch of cat hair that belonged to Audrey's cat in his apartment to cause him to have an allergic reaction, and therefore grab his inhaler and inhale the fentanyl into his lungs, and then die because of it. But after they had left Ridley's apartment, and before Ridley even got back to his apartment, Ridley killed Cecil. So basically that's what happened. And then they hired the Russian scientists to synthesize the fentanyl derivative. So it's basically where the scientist comes into it. So that's the three main mysteries of the week. There's two side stories going on while these two episodes happen. One is that in episode 5, this man named Odin Reinbach, he enlists the help of Joan and Sherlock to supposedly track down someone who is threatening to kidnap his niece. So they end up going to Odin's job to figure out who could have done it, because Odin thinks that someone within his company is threatening to kidnap his niece. When they don't find anything, they confront him about it at the end of episode 5, saying, "You sent us on a wild goose chase. Why did you do that?" And he says he wanted to test them because of the fact that they seem to manage to get things figured out no matter what, and by any means necessary, even if it means breaking and entering into someone's house to figure out what happened and why. So essentially, what Odin tells them is that there was this kid who had went to his high school and shot up the whole place, killed 17 of his classmates, and essentially Odin thought that he could prevent it because this kid had, in the weeks leading up to him shooting his school up, showed signs of, wanting to do it, and felt that he could. And this kid had used Odin's company to express those feelings. And so Odin felt responsible for the fact that he didn't see it sooner. And so ever since then, he has been trying to prevent more crimes from happening by breaching the terms of agreement that his company has for their users and try to prevent other crimes from happening. Um, and so essentially, Patrick Mears, the guy who shot and killed this this guy named Bloodsoe, who was planning to um, blow up a ferry, um, and consequently shot Captain Gregson. Um, the Odin had sent Mears onto that whole path. So he described Mears as a hammer in his whole operation. And so what he wants Joan and Sherlock to do is to be like a surgical precision where they do it much neater and cleaner and all that. And um, both Sherlock and Joan decide that they don't want to do this, so they get new phones and new devices and all that. And so they then decided to go to the NSA to try to see if they can help. And when Sherlock does so, he figures out that the agent that he went to, Agent McNally, he's actually in on the whole thing with Odin. And essentially lies to Joan, saying that they will have to be patient and have to, wait to try to take him down. Because McNally told him the same thing that Odin is saying, is that they want Sherlock and Joan to be a part of this. So that's that whole storyline. And then there's this second storyline with Captain Gregson coming back to his to being captain at the precinct, and barely 5 minutes into him being back as captain, this woman named Bree, who is one of the detectives there, I think, she tells him that she is turning in her papers to work in the private sector. And that concerns Captain Gregson. So he thinks that it has something to do with Dwyer, Captain Dwyer, who had stood in Gregson's place until Gregson was better. Turns out that Dwyer has has a previous complaint against him about misconduct and all that, where he asked a woman out, and she said no, and or something like that, and then she complained, and he got a 1-year dismissal probation, where if anything else happened where he got another complaint against him, he would be fired, essentially. And turns out that Bree had gone on a vacation with an ex-boyfriend where she was in a swimsuit. I don't remember if she said it was like a bikini or what, but Dwyer found these pictures and then sent these pictures to co-workers and he had said some very very not nice things about her, and eventually it got back around to her, and she it upset her, so she was like, I'm just gonna put my papers and go work somewhere else. Um, so Captain Gregson is, when he hears this, he's like, the only way to prevent or to keep these things from happening is to complain about it, to bring it to light. And she feels like if she does, she will get crank calls, and lines will be drawn, sides will be picked, and she will be looked at like she had asked for it, and made a good cop lose his job and all that. Um, and she will eventually get threats, anonymous threats, and all that. So she doesn't want to do that. Eventually, she ends up making a complaint against Captain Dwyer, but she still feels the same way she did when she talked to Gregson about, the backlash that she would get. Um, and so, and she's still planning on putting in the papers and going into the private sector. So that was that second storyline. So essentially, I thought these were good episodes. I know this isn't the last time you'll see Odin Rhinebeck and Agent McNally and all that. I know this won't be the last time. I don't know for sure if we will see them in every single episode or not, but I honestly think that Sherlock will end up getting killed. I know it's sad to say, but it's given that this is the last season, I think that Sherlock will end up getting killed, possibly even in the season finale. I doubt that he will be killed before then, and I think that this will cause Joan to end up moving elsewhere, whether that's back to England or to the opposite end of the United States, or whatever. I don't know. And then I don't think this is the last we'll see of Captain Dwyer either, because he wasn't too happy when Captain Gregson confronted him about the complaint and what he thought he did to Bree. So I don't think this is the last we'll see of Detective or Captain Dwyer. Sorry, and I think it'll eventually cause the captain to retire himself. So we'll see, or I'll see, as the episodes go by. I plan on doing another 3 episodes tomorrow, and then the last 3 episodes when Thursday as well. So until the next video, I'll see you guys later.